Good morning, wayward warriors, and welcome to another episode of the podcast Prophet. Wow, so I'm just waking up, and officially it's the 1 year anniversary of my mother's death, but technically, since it's only been a year, it was a year ago yesterday. And I just want to thank all of you who were there for our Sacred Sunday episode 15. It was really nice to be able to talk some things out, and I even got some good tears in there while one of our other tribe members, Alana, she lost her father recently, and so that came through, and it just stirred up a lot of stuff because of my mom, and it's interesting because I started the day feeling very joyful and happy, and I was like, wow, Mom, like you've been gone officially a year, and I've been going through this whole last week, I've been going through some really heavy shit leading up to her anniversary, and of course it comes off the tails of the Lionsgate portal closing, and right now, we are in the shadow of Mercury retrograde because Mercury went direct last week, but now we're in the shadow of eclipse season, and it's just feeling like a very auspicious time. I love that word. But it is. It has been. It has been a very interesting time. So I decided to do this with you because a year ago, the week before my mom died, I had so many signs that the first one I was like, oh, my mom died. Like I was like, something's up, And then I checked in with Spirit and they said no. And then I was like, should I reach out to her? I kept checking in with Spirit. I mean, it got kind of weird, meaning like my behavior, because the night before my father passed, which he passed 10 years before my mom, but the year before my father passed, the night before, I had the most vivid dream. It was so vivid, and I didn't dream about my father very often, and we were like having such a good time. We were at a family party, but Liv Tyler apparently was my sister or cousin or something because she was there, and I was talking to her like we were family, and it was very natural, which I think she and I would be like that anyway after spending a good amount of time with her dad. And we spoke about her almost the whole time. I just know that she's just this beautiful soul. And anyway, so it was really funny and really weird. And I remember thinking, oh, I should call my dad. And that's when I was just really tapping into my gifts. And so long story short, I didn't call my dad because Maya Angelou died that morning, and she was one of my heroes. And I was very, very sad, especially because I'd known about her for so long. I think Oprah Winfrey really helped bring her into the spotlight for the masses. And, but it wasn't until like maybe 2 or 3 years before she died that I really got into her and was surprised that no one ever made music from her poems, although maybe she didn't want them to, but I just thought she was just such a genius and they should be put to melodic use somehow. Anyway, when I found out she died, I was just so upset. I was so upset, so upset, so upset. But my father lived 2 hours ahead of me, and I was thinking about calling him on my way to work or texting him or something, and I didn't. Long story short, my dad died that night. And there were just all these things that kept stopping me from talking to my dad. And I think about that too, because I had a great influence on my father. A lot of people don't realize this, but, or I should say, maybe they know this, maybe they don't. Speaking of people who know us both. But my father and I, because when my parents got divorced, my dad was very naughty and he relied on me way too much. And he used me to try to get to my mom. I was 12 when they got divorced. By the time I was 17, 18, I was like, do it yourself or call her yourself. Or there was a time where we lived in an apartment building where we lived on the first floor, and my dad would like bang on my mom's window to get her to open, and, he'd show up drunk. I love you. And looking back now, I'm like, my gosh, I'm like, they were so young. So in their 30s. And then if my mom wouldn't respond, he'd come to my window. And sometimes we would just sit there with the window open and him on the outside of the building and me on the inside at like 1 or 2 in the morning. And then, my mom would either be sleeping or she wouldn't be there, or she'd be like, go home, I'm going to call the police. But my dad and I formed a very, looking back on it now, very unhealthy relationship, but a relationship nonetheless. And now knowing what I am, it makes sense. A lot of adults relied on me for very deep conversations about things because I was very philosophical as a child. As I've told you guys and expressed before, I was thrown out of Sunday school at 8 years old because I asked too many questions. So I was always with the adults. Being with kids felt weird to me. The only time I really liked being around kids is when I can, I did like to play, dolls, Barbies, things like that. But I digress. So long story short, this relationship that I formed with my father was definitely a friendship, and it didn't change much when we got older. If anything, it got more, the tables really turned and I became the parent and him the child. And then when it got to be too much, I just I cut my dad off. And I didn't speak with my dad for like 5 years, and it crushed him. And I said, well, maybe, you should have cared about me, because 9 out of 10, whenever I got on the phone with my dad, he wanted to talk about everybody else but me, because most people in our family didn't talk to him anymore or wouldn't talk to him anymore. It got really bad. And so, especially my sister. And it seemed like because I'm the one he wanted to talk to, or excuse me, because I'm the only one that would talk to him, there was even a time where my brother didn't talk to him. You know what I mean? It just was, he just felt really isolated, and I get it, which is funny though, because he remarried my stepmom, who he had an affair with when my mom was pregnant with me, and she has kids, and they had grandkids, and he worked and owned, a bar, restaurant, and banquet hall, and I mean, he had everybody. He was never alone. He was never lonely. In fact, he liked to go fishing so he can be quiet and be by himself. Fishing was his favorite thing. But when it came to our family, it's like he was with my mom for 18 years. And his family life with his parents and his siblings wasn't always the best. So he really glommed on to my mom's mom and dad. They were more like parents to him and that side of the family. And I think part of it too was, my dad, not everybody, but my dad's parents were alcoholics, both of them. And a great deal of the kids drank as well. I think there was 8 of them. And I think there was only 1 or 2 that didn't drink, and they were really religious. And one ended up moving away and becoming like a state trooper. And I think he became a chief in Kentucky. But anyway, so I think what he loves so much about my mom's side of the family is my mom was the oldest of 6, and they weren't drinkers. They weren't partiers. It was just joy and fun. It was just laughter. And, it's like when we had family parties on my mom's side, it was like literally just lots of fun. And I think my dad really missed that, So he'd ask me how everybody was and how they were doing, and, and then finally one day, I don't know who said it to me. Maybe it was one of my dear friends at the time, because I feel like it was one of my girlfriends. And they were like, it's kind of sad. Your dad never asks about you. It could have even been my ex-husband, now that I think about it. And I didn't really think about it until they said that. And I'm like, he asked about me. And they're like, when? I don't like you from the time you're on the phone. They're like, and a lot of times he'd call me because he'd hear through the grapevine something happened or whatever. So he'd be like calling me to like get the skinny, he's like, get the lowdown, like what's going on. And so I allowed it, but then when I started to realize that he was really unhealthy for me, I cut him off. And after 5 years, he ended up getting sober. And during that time, and he called me and left me a message, and he said, "Can you please call me? I'd really like to talk to you. I know it's been a long time, but it's really important." And it was hard for me. I hemmed and hawed, and I was like, is he dying? Like, what's going on? Because he'd been sick for a really long time. So I called him, and the first thing he said was, "I'm sorry." He had gone to AA, and, they have to, one of their things is they have to go around and make their apologies to people. So he called me or we spoke, and the first thing he said was, "I'm sorry." And it wasn't just a blanket, "I'm sorry." It's like the clarity of sobriety made him realize and recognize how inappropriate he was. And that, it's like when I hear that song from Kelly Clarkson, when she's like, "You should have known better than to lean on me," when she's like, "And now I cry in the middle of the night for the same damn thing. Because of you, I never stray too far from the sidewalk." It's true. I mean, every time I hear that song, it's like I felt like that song was written for me and my dad. I mean, I literally sent that song to my dad because I was like, because then when we did reconnect, we became really friends. And we never really had a daughter-father relationship. And when I did a lot of like past regression and past life stuff, I realized like my dad and I have known each other. We've been soulmates through many lifetimes together, and we've actually been lovers before, which I know a lot of people think it's so weird and they don't understand that, but it's true. And I think that's why our relationship was always very askewed. And unlike my relationship with my family, my siblings was always so different than their relationship with my parents. And all of my relationships really. And, now I'm understanding being an earth angel and a star seed, a light worker, whatever terminology you want to call it. I understand why I chose to walk in an avatar in this lifetime, why everything makes sense, I understand it. So one of the last conversations I had with my dad that was really, really good, he was going in for, I forget, like triple or quadruple bypass, like one of those like really big ones, and he was really scared, he was really concerned he was going to die and on the table and not like tell me how he felt. So we ended up having a really good conversation. It was really awesome. And he got through the surgery and all was well. And we made so many amends. I called him after the surgery. We had a really good conversation. And it was I hadn't talked to him in about a month. And that's when I had that dream. And then he passed the next day. So I was so upset with myself, especially coming to terms with understanding my abilities and my gifts and signs and understanding them. But then I realized you know what? That was my selfishness that wanted so desperately to just talk to him one last time. But all the conversations I had with him were good. And after everything that we'd been through together, and so much more had happened and transpired over that time, I felt like it was actually his higher self saying goodbye, that dream. And about 30 years ago, I was working at the Flowering Tree in Los Angeles, and Steve Tyler was a regular customer of ours. And we had some really good conversations. And one time I was really blessed to actually sit down across from him and have a conversation. And we were talking about fatherhood and live and why he got, she was one of the reasons why he got sober, like, you know, she and the kids, you know. But just how he was like, I need to change my life. I want to be around for them. I want to, you know, this and that. And I think the reason why Liv Tyler was in my dream was because I feel like Steve Tyler and Liv Tyler, I didn't know their relationship or their friendship or anything like that. But in terms of me and my father, I feel like that was probably the closest person I ever spoke to, that we had that closest similarities. You know, someone who was, my dad was a rock star, you know, even though he owned that, whatever, when he was younger, he was a musician and that was his dream. And he played music at his bar like all the time. He was really famous in his area. My godfather, his best friend, Johnny Spence, was an Elvis Presley impersonator when Elvis was alive. And, you know, so there's just like this, like he definitely like had his moment. He met Elvis when they were playing in Vegas once, and he loved that story. He loved to tell that story. My dad was like Big Fish. If you've never seen the movie Big Fish, go see it. Seriously, go watch it right now. It's so good. But the ending was so good of Big Fish, because that's kind of, my dad would tell us stories and be like, Dad, come on. And then you'd talk to people and they would, I mean, it's like I would have people crying to me, like telling me how beautiful my dad was. Whenever I would, you know, when I was living in LA or wherever I was and I'd go visit my dad in his restaurant, it's like all the people that in the bar, it's like they all would talk about what a hero he was, how wonderful he was. And I tell the story, and because it's a good one, you know, about this guy who was sitting at the bar and he's like, if it wasn't for your dad, he's like, my electricity would have got turned off. You know, I mean, I was like, my dad never gave me anything. But, you know, my dad told me, I remember we had a conversation, you know, and when we were good, and I asked him, I said, why didn't you ever help me? Why didn't, you know, and he's like, because he's like, you're not like the other kids. He's like, you don't need me like they do. He's like, you are beautiful and charming and smart. And he's like, you don't need that. He's like, you know, and I remember when I was younger, when I was struggling, my dad got mad at me and he's like, if I look like you and I was your age, I'd be, you know, he's like, you're in Los Angeles. He's like, shit, go sit in a fucking bar in a fancy hotel. He's like, go get yourself a sugar daddy, go marry a rich man, you know, go marry a rich old man. And I was just like, Dad, you know, but that's how he was. That's how he thought. He was just like he had no sympathy for me whatsoever whenever I was struggling. And, because he, you know, that was just the world that he was raised in. He was born in 1950, you know, so he didn't look at the world the same. Anyway, the reason why I started this, sorry, I didn't mean to cough I apologize for that. My throat chakra just got really tight. And I feel like because my dad's trying to get me to refocus my energy. So after my dad died, he came to me in so many different ways. But one of my favorites was, there's this picture of me and my dad when I was little. Or it could have been a picture of my whole family at Christmas. It's a really cool picture, actually. My mom looks awesome. She's like smoking hot in this awesome fucking outfit from the 70s. I'm like 3, so it's probably like 1974. And my dad's wearing like, you know, an old school like polyester suit, you know. And it was just the way he was holding me. And I was wearing, I think, a Raggedy Ann dress or something. But like I can picture it all in my head. And he had a hat on. And I was like, look at you guys styling, you know. Like my parents were styling. Like I said, he was a musician, you know, in the 70s. Amazing guitar player. Really fucking gifted. So good. Like so good. He came to me a few times, and because I was like, why weren't we like the Von Trapps? Like we all had musical chops, you know, all of us like loved music, all my siblings and my parents. And I was like, you know, and I know it wasn't meant to go down that way, but you know, so I was really sad one day and I was crying super, super hard. I cried myself to sleep. And in my dream state, my dad came to visit me, and I'll never forget it because it was like I was at a university. It was so bizarre. It's hard to explain it. And the house that I was standing on the steps of was really old, like a really old stone house. Like maybe like, you know, it's like a university, but it's like the house that like maybe, you know, the what do they call him? The dean or like the head of the university, would live in. Like it was just a big, beautiful, it was kind of like a mansion, but not, it's hard to explain. Really beautiful, these big trees. And I was standing on the front stairs, but it was like, it was like what do you call it? Like a porch, And all of a sudden I see this guy walking towards me down the sidewalk. And as he got closer, I was like, God, he looks like my dad. But he was really young. Now, mind you, my dad had just passed, right? And he was 64 when he died. And he's coming towards me, and he's coming towards me. And I don't know why, but when I started the dream, I was a young woman, like maybe like in my late teens, early 20s. It was me, but it wasn't. It's hard to explain. And then as he got closer, I was like, Dad? I'm like, Dad? And I just like ran towards him. But as I was running towards him, I started getting smaller. It was so weird. I started getting smaller. And I became that little girl that he was holding in the picture. And he picked me up and he was like, oh my gosh, I'm like starting to cry again. But I thought he was magic. And my mom would say, why do you think he's a hero? He's a drunk. He's never here and blah, blah, blah. And I'm the one that's always here. And I was like, wow. I'm like, I'm sorry. I just, and that's true. It's like the kids miss the one that's not there because, a lot of times it's because the parents aren't getting along. It's not necessarily the kids are like, my dad loved us, but like, he didn't know how to be a dad. He was 17 years old when he became a father. He didn't really get to be who he wanted to be. He and my mom had sex. Their parents made him get married. They were pregnant. That was it. So cut to last night or in the middle of the night, I had the worst night's sleep I have had in a really long time. Like I have a headache right now. I woke up with a headache. I have a headache. I slept like shit. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but the last week has just been really weird leading up to my mom's anniversary. But the week before my mom died last year, I kept getting signs to call her and I didn't. Just like with my dad. And do you ever see those movies where something starts to happen and then all the other people like are talking it through and then they realize and they're like, just like dad. And then they like freak out and they go to it because they're like, oh my gosh, it's going to happen again, right? Because that's what our mind does. It plays tricks on us and it tells us this and it tells us that and it says this is going to happen or that's going to happen or we take all of our fears and our suffering and our pain and we turn it into something else. And I can tell you right now, just like my father, I wasn't supposed to call my dad, even though I wanted to. His higher self came and had closure with me in his dream. He wasn't warning me to call him. It all happened for a reason. I mean, my dad and Maya Angelou died on the same day. My dad was born on February 28th. He died on May 28th. Completion, 8 and 2 is 10. So I just thought, wow, that's just really fascinating. It's really, really fascinating. I mean, I thought about it. What if I hadn't seen that Maya Angelou died and I called my dad? What if I ended up changing the entire trajectory of his day and those things didn't happen and he didn't die, It's not about whether I do or don't have that much power. It's about the fact that that was his time and that was his day and it didn't matter. And maybe I would have because I had huge influence. And if he had said to me, I think I'm going to have a beer today, I would have been like, Dad, I don't think you should. My dad had it convinced in his mind that he could drink again, that he can have just like one or two. He didn't really like being drunk. He really just liked the buzz and just having a beer. He loved his garden. He loved, tinkering in his garage on cars. He loved making sausage. He had a whole setup in his garage to make homemade sausage. Like, he had all these hobbies that he loved to do every day, all the time. So, he has this big surgery I think it was in February, and he died in May. And I think it was in February because I feel like he did say something about his birthday, like, oh, I wonder if I'm going to die, So he only got to live, and he had to go through all of that recovery. And just when he started to feel good, he decided to have a beer that day. He asked his doctor. He had gone for his last checkup, and the doctor's like, "You're good. You did so good, Bill. Good, good healing. Good on you, and you're looking good. All is good. All is well." And he thought he had we all did. We all thought he had a brand new lease on life. But he was obsessed with having these beers, like just having one or two, like out in the garden. He wanted to sit and watch the sunset at the end of the day. I mean, I believe he meant that, and I believe he probably could. And I think he did. I don't know. I don't remember. It's been so long, and I don't remember exactly what my stepmom told me and stuff, but long story short, he did. And he ended up, I still to this day don't know exactly what my dad died of. A lot of people are suspicious because he died and my stepmom had him cremated within 24 hours. And everybody was a little suspicious. She had taken care of him for years, and I don't know, there's just a lot of weird suspicion around that, and I didn't mean to bring that negativity into the story, but I still, even though I know that he died naturally, I still feel like I don't know, because I had when she told me how it happened, it just didn't feel real. And every time I try to tap into it, it's like Spirit doesn't want me to see it because it doesn't matter now, It's like everything happened the way it was supposed to, and she's gone now too. So it's like, whatever, just let it go. They had their relationship, and their, everybody has their demons and their monsters, and my dad wasn't the easiest person to take care of. God bless her. I mean, she was with him, I think, for 25 years or something. So, and they always said that, I think my mom was my dad's first love, like teenage love. And I think he had the soul connection with my stepmom. And I think, because I always thought if my dad really loved my mom and us, I always thought, oh, he can get sober. But isn't that what we say to ourselves? Oh, if you love me. By the way, when I had my eyes, I wasn't even looking at the screen, and I just looked down and it was 2802. That's my dad's birthday backwards. That's crazy. So when I was getting all these signs about my mom, I mean, I was wrecked. I was wrecked the week before she died, and then for days and weeks after she died. And then sometimes I think that's why Bubba went down so rapidly, because it's when I was just starting to feel better and I thought Bubba was just in her elder. I'll never forget, it was the week of Samhain that I was just starting to feel better. She died August 18th. It was, for those of you who don't know, it's Halloween. And it had been, a few months, and she had come through, and we had been hanging out and talking. So I felt so much better about it, and I knew it was okay. And then Bubba started to take a nosedive right after Samhain. I mean, the week of Thanksgiving, I thought she was going to die. So the fact that she even hung on for 2 more months was, but sometimes I wonder if, because I really leaned on Bubba a lot, because Alder and I had separated in July. So, I would talk to Bubba and I'd be like, should I go, Bubba? Should I go visit my mom? Should I go? I mean, I just went back and forth and back and forth. And then when all those signs came through the week before, I was like, oh my gosh, it's my dad all over again. I was like, this is my dad all over again. I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And so when she died, I was angry because I was like, I had a whole week. Maybe I wouldn't have had time to go visit her. I mean, we had the money and all that, but it was just, I just knew I wasn't supposed to go. And you know, as much as we want to control the situation or have the closure that we wanted, it's not necessarily the closure that they needed. So I'm sad that my father, went through all that and died so young, especially going through such a horrible surgery and then dying, a few months later. It's like, and you think everything is good. But I mean, literally, he must have just been like, that stupid beer, you know what I mean? But it's like, and it makes me realize too that he never really healed that addiction. It was always dormant, it was just laying there dormant. Because even though I crave wine and I want it sometimes, and I do believe I want to make my own wine. I've always wanted to. So I do believe I'll drink wine again someday. But I know that my human avatar and my spiritual, it's not meant for me. Alcohol's not my friend. It's my body doesn't like it. My body loves cannabis. I love cannabis. It makes so much sense with what I am that I would align with that. And I have days where I'm like, like I don't need to smoke, but then I have days where I'm like this morning, I'm like, oh, thank God. I'm so grateful because my headache was so bad and I just was not feeling right and I needed it. You know what I mean? Like I needed to have, that just to kind of, my headache is there, but it's like more dull now and I'm more calm, but also because my dream state and the way I slept last night was fucking weird. So last night felt like the dream that I had with my dad after he died because, yesterday was a year ago technically that she died, but today, the 18th, she died on the 18th. And this is the interesting part. My stepdad died on January 18th, and that's the last time I talked to my mom. So my mom is so powerful that it doesn't surprise me that the day that he died and the last day that I spoke to her, meaning the 18th, which is a 9, is the day that she died. And it's even more interesting because we're in a 9-year right now. And I keep seeing this imagery of my mom. I have been seeing like these moments, and it's been really difficult because I still, for the last year, have struggled with the woulda, coulda, shoulda. But she showed me in the last few weeks that, yes, that was her reaching out to me because she knew she was going to die. We've always been really connected. And she knows deep down that I am psychic. She knows that I'm, well, not psychic. I don't even like to say psychic because, I mean, I don't know. I'm all encompassing. I'm a telepathic medium. I have psychic abilities, but I mean, I just have a connection with everybody. If I'm really, especially if I know you personally, or like, I mean, she's my mom. We were connected. I grew inside of her. If not for her and my father, I wouldn't be here. I chose them to be my parents. They chose me to be their child. I mean, there's just so many things. So she was reaching out to me. My dad, I was getting a vibe to call my dad that week, but more so like, oh, it's been a month. I really want to call dad. Not like, oh, I hope he's okay. I wasn't feeling like there was anything wrong with him. My mom was different. I felt her slipping away. I knew that she was like pulling away from this world. And I felt like those were her ways of trying to have closure and say goodbye. But then I thought about the last time I talked to my mom, just like the last time I talked to my dad. And the last time I talked to my mom was the day that my stepdad died. And we were on the phone for 6 hours. 1 minute they were talking, the next minute he was dead. He was really sick. My mom was taking care of him. She was stressed out. They were arguing. She went into the other room to get him something, and then he was yelling 1 second, and the next second he was gone. Or she didn't hear anything. And she's like, she even said, I think she said something like, did you die? What is going on? Are you okay? And she walked back in the room. And I mean, I've never had a conversation like that with anyone, because even though my mom had called everybody, because I'm 2 hours behind, my mom left me last because she knew that and she also knows that I'm more of a night owl. So she called his children. He died around 7 o'clock. And if you're going to go, I mean, he was in his home with his wife arguing, which is what they did a lot of. And he died. Like 1 minute they're arguing and he was gone. So like he didn't suffer. He had no pain. It was just like, boom, he was just gone. It was like 1 minute he was yelling, gone. And it's interesting because my mom died in that house too. She died in her sleep. So very interesting. And I think it's so even more interesting that by the time my mom got to me, she had called his 3 sons, my siblings, her siblings, like, she called all the people that she felt were like important. Or I think she may have had like, I think she may have called one of the boys and then like had him call the brothers. I don't know. I don't remember now. But when she called me, it was like, at first she was matter of fact. And I think it's because when she found him, he was just laying there. His eyes were open. Like he was, and he wasn't stiff yet. Right. So she was just like, are you fucking around with me? Like are you okay? And then when she realized he was dead, she was like, oh my God. So she had a pretty horrific experience. They live like kind of far out in the mountains, and the way he died in the guest room, and there's no easy way, like, it's hard to explain, but it's a small cabin, and the way that the door to that room is, it comes straight out into the hallway, but the hallway's really narrow, and across from the hallway is a closet, but it's where the washer and dryers are. And there's basically no way to get him out on a stretcher. You know what I mean? So like these paramedics who were really young, I think she said it was a woman and a man. They send the paramedics or whatever, and basically my mom had to help carry her dead husband's body. Like she had to help get him out of there. She had to wait for them to come, and then and sit with that. And then she even said that there was one point where, and he had a dog. My mom didn't want any animals, but this dog kind of wandered onto their property and they adopted it. And she said the dog was like really upset and like wouldn't leave his side. And she was just like, go. My mom doesn't have patience for animals like that. She was just like, get out of here. Or like, he was just like, I was like, Mom, I'm like, the poor dog, he just lost his best friend. Like, but anyway, that's how she was. I love her, but I love you, Mom. But I don't know if that's exactly how it happened, but that's kind of, I'm just trying to remember. We were on the phone for 6 hours. And so she told me that she had called all these people. So by the time that she had gone through all that, called all these people and got to me, all of a sudden it was like I had become the therapist. Now, mind you, I had stopped talking to my parents. I told them it was because I was working on my novel, which was true, and that I needed some time away from the family, and it could be a few months or it could be a few years. I wasn't sure. So she had called me a few times, or like when he got sick so he died in January. I think he got sick in like October. And that was right after Alder had tried to kill himself. And so I was taking care of him. He was on a feeding tube. So I was like taking care of my partner, with all that. And my mom told me that my stepdad had fallen ill like in October. And I was like, oh, so Alder had His incident happened August 11th, which is so interesting because it was right before the end of the Lionsgate portal. And he was in the hospital until mid-September, I think. And then I brought him home. And so he was on feeding tube, and I was taking care of him like that until like November. So it was really bizarre that October was when my stepdad fell ill, because I was like, wow, Mom. I'm like, we were both taking care of our husbands at the same time, but we weren't talking, you know? And he was really upset because I never, ever missed his birthday. And I was going to call him on his birthday, but as far as I was concerned, you know, I was just going to let it go. I was like, I need to let this go. I can't, you know what I mean? Like, if I'm going to stop talking to them permanently, I can't just keep coming in when someone's sick or whatever. The whole point was that I needed to heal through my stuff, and I needed a break from them. So by the time he died in January, I hadn't talked to them over the holidays or his birthday, but they called me on my birthday, which broke my heart because they were so cute about it. And my mom, hold on one second. Okay, sorry about that. I had to change positions. So when I was talking to my mom, this was one of the main reasons why I had to stop talking to my mom. She's like, I said, oh man, she said something like, you missed his birthday. She's like, you never missed his birthday. You were always the first one to call and sing happy birthday to him. You broke his heart. He was devastated. And I was like, and I'm thinking, she's just got done telling me that she was yelling at him because he didn't feel good, and that she should have taken him to the hospital because he was shitting black, but she was so tired of taking care of him and all this stuff. And she's telling me all these horrible things that she was doing. And then she like just said that to me. And all I thought was, thank you for reiterating why I stopped talking to you. I was like, this is why, because she always had this way of making me feel really bad about myself or really bad about my choices if she didn't like them, or, you know, but yet she could do no wrong. And so, wow, Mom. But my mom, this is how awesome my mom is, though, and now in spirit, right? Because this is her true spirit, because this is what she's trying to show me, is that she was trying to get me to say goodbye to her because she wanted closure with me. But in that 6-hour conversation, my mom and I talked about everything. I told her, Mom, I was honest with her. And I said, the reason why I stopped talking to you guys is because you told me I was a demon, and that my gifts were from the devil, and that if I continued as a medium or whatever, that I couldn't talk to you or talk to the family, you know, about it. And, you know, and so like, I mean, when we were getting off the phone, I literally said to my mom, unless you know, want to have a different relationship with me, I'm like, this is the last time I'm going to talk to you. And then as we were getting off the phone, I said, goodbye, Mom. I'm like, I love you, Mom. And she wouldn't get off the phone until I finally had to go, Mom, because it was like 5 a.m. or something. And my mom had been up all night, and she's somebody who's like in bed by like 9, 10, the latest. So I'm like, you had a horrific experience. You have a lot to process. I said, I'm like, I'm not saying I'm never going to talk to you. I basically said to her, like, this is in your court. And then it was like she proceeded the next year after that to kind of terrorize me in weird ways, because, you know, she left me a message, you know, she's like, Aunt Kim died, who I was really close to. She was my closest aunt. And then like on my birthday, she called me like hysterically crying. She's like, I don't understand why you're doing this. And, you know, it was just like, why are you doing this to me? So the vibe I got from spirit was it wasn't going to change. Like if I went to go see her or if I had a conversation, I would just be giving her closure. But she had the opportunity to be a mom to me that I needed and deserved. She had 50 years. I was 50. So if I'm 53, I was 52 last year. So she had 52 years to be a different mom. And she was a really awesome, beautiful, wonderful mother to me in so many ways. But she could also be really awful. So, I was sad. Of course I was sad. I was gutted. But then the more over this last year, I've had so many moments because her and Bubba, I've had a lot of I think if you don't have if you have any type of feelings of unfinished business, there's going to be that, it's part of the third dimensional guilt trip that we were, kind of born and raised into, but it's kind of fucked up. It's like, what does that mean really at the end of the day? What is guilt for? And shame and like all these like negative energies and emotions that they do weave us into who we are. But also at the same time, it's just been a big year of loss for me. And even with Alder, as much as I love him, there's a part of me that I can feel that he's my twin flame because I really want to let him go, but I can feel that I'm not supposed to let him go. Do you know what I mean? And my ex coming into my life over the last, several months, that energy has been really interesting for me too, to kind of look at my relationship with Alder, because the romantic lover of love in me wants to be like, fuck you, fuck this world, and like go be with my ex and live in the fantasy of our love bubble that we lived in together years ago. But, we're talking like 20 years ago. And we're not the same people. And Alder is just going through a really, dark period of his life. And, what kind of partner would I be if I didn't stand by him? He stood by me through a lot of dark, heavy shit. Whether he wanted to or not, he was there, And so, him leaving, my mom dying, Baba dying, all of that had to happen. I mean, I remember having moments with some of you guys where you were having problems with your significant others, or you didn't have anybody and you really wanted someone so badly. And I remember thinking, wow, I'm so blessed to have this awesome little family, of Baba and Alder. And it wasn't perfect, but it was our little dysfunctional world, and now I realize, like, I think because I knew it was coming, how people are like, oh, I feel so sorry for you, and they're like, my life's so great, but their life's really not that great. I mean, it's like 90% of the stuff on social media when people are like, look at my perfect life, look at my perfect husband and my perfect nails and my perfect house and my perfect car, and and look at my latte, my blinged up latte cup, and you know what I mean? It's like, it's just a bunch of bullshit. It's just a bunch of feeding into like this fakery and fuckery of like wanting to look and feel and be rich. And it's like, happiness is the only currency. Self-love is the only currency. The other currency, it's not real. So, I guess in honor of my mom today, I ask that you please light a candle for her and say a prayer. Her name, her full name, or all of her names, she was Susan Lurleen Metzger Wazalowski Makoviak. My mom's like, I married 2 Polish guys. She's like, there's no Polish in my family. My mom's side is German. My grandfather is mostly German, and my grandmother was the British Isles, I was going to say French and France at the same time, and Native American. So, and my dad's side was Polish and German. So I'm mostly German. If you add it together, I'm mostly German, which is funny. But, and I say funny, not funny like haha, but just like funny, interesting, because I feel like out of all of them, I align the most with the UK and French and the Native American, my grandma's side, than my dad's side. but my dad had gifts and so did my mom. So it doesn't surprise me, like me, I mean, so it doesn't surprise me that, we had those connections before they died and then after they died. And I remember after my grandmother went first on my mom's side, and then my grandfather, her husband, a few years later. And I remember my mom was about my age now, and she called me crying, and she's like, I'm an orphan. I'm an orphan. Grandpa died. She's like, I literally feel like an orphan. And I'm like, Mom, you have 5 siblings. And she's like, I know, but, she's like, I'm the oldest though. So she's like, I feel like, because my the youngest, my mom's youngest sister was just like 17 months older than my sister. And so they were really close in age. And so my mom always kind of felt like her mom. So when my grandparents died, my mom took on the matriarchal role, and especially when my Aunt Kim started to get sick. My Aunt Kim, even though she was second to the youngest, she was really close to my grandparents, and everybody always went to her for like advice and things like that. She was the only other Sag in that generation. I'm Sag. And I was really close to her too. She's the one that I was saying that my mom called me when she's like, Aunt Kim died. Well, she had called me and told me she was in the hospital and I didn't respond. And then she texted me and said that she died and I didn't respond. And I think that pissed my mom off. I don't know exactly, but I kept getting anger energy from my mom. So she was used to getting her way. She was used to manipulating and getting her way. And I remember, even though I'd cut off like one by one all of our family members, the only person I still talked to was my mom. So when she came to visit me, she's like, you're not going to cut me off like everybody else, are you? And I basically said to her in so many words, if you not if you behave, basically is what I said to her in so many words. Like, if you stop talking to me like this and you stop treating me like this, and if you will be my mom, an unconditional loving parent, then of course you can stay in my life. But if you're going to judge me, tell me what to do, tell me how to be a grown-up, tell me I'm going through a phase when I'm telling you that the rest of my other life was a phase and masked for the rest of you, I'm like, Mom, don't you think I know who I am? I'm 50 years old. I was like, don't you think I know who I am? I was like, it was the year I was turning 50 is that I stopped talking to her. I'm like, I know who I am, Mom. And I said, I know you want to think this is a phase. I said, but it's not a phase. I'm never going to stop being this. I've always been this. I just hid who I was to make you guys feel comfortable, to feel loved, to feel accepted. But I've always been this. So, yeah. And maybe they had me make this to help you guys, through that as well. Because yesterday on our Sacred Sunday episode, one of our tribe members, Alana, whose father passed, we were talking about, how she struggles with her very narcissistic mother as well. And, this is just maybe a message to some of you that you don't have to talk to your parents. You will see them again in the afterlife, but they have lessons to learn here too. And we can't always save everybody or intercede, even if we want to, even if we think we should. My gut reaction when I found out my mom was sick was like, I didn't even hesitate. I just went and started emailing my niece back and was reaching out to her. Actually, I was texting. I went to text her first because she gave me her phone number. So I went to text her first. And as I was about to send the text, I heard no. Then I started writing her an email. I still have an email that is in my outbox, in my drafts, that I've never sent. And I haven't deleted it either. I don't know if I'll ever send it, but I guess I miss her, my niece, a lot. I miss my nieces and nephews desperately. But, it's difficult because they have their relationship with their parents and their parents don't want me in their lives. And so I found that it was just too hard on them. And I know they wanted to talk to me and talk to them. And I thought, I'm just going to make it easy on everybody and I'm just going to bow out. And I did. And her email was actually, I can tell, it was hard for her to write. And actually, the interesting thing is, a lot of it was me thanking her for and commending her on her bravery to write me that email because, she didn't know what was going to happen or come of it or whatever. And it was really well written. And she's a beautiful, dynamic being. And so, I know that there are a lot of light workers in my families and witches and healers and deep down believers in magic, but I know they struggle as well with believing in that. So I feel like when it's time, if it's time, they'll come to me. If not, they'll find their mentors and their people, and it will all work out. But so here's the kicker. So after I told you guys all that, so last night I had this fucking crazy dream, because I said I was like in fever dream. Like I couldn't sleep. I was in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out. I was asleep. I was awake. I was asleep. I was awake. I could not sleep. But when I was sleeping, I kept going back to this same fucking dream. And it was so weird. And in the dream, I was in this house. And it was in a house I'd never seen, in a place I don't know. And the first time I think I remember in the dream, I was sleeping on the floor. And then I realized I was in a hallway at the edge of a doorway. And I heard the voices of my brother and my sister talking about me. And to them, it looked like I was sleeping, but I could hear them. And they were saying things like, yeah, way to go. Nice place to sleep. Like, she couldn't sleep anywhere else. Like, why is she sleeping there? Why is, blah, blah, blah. Now we all have to walk around her. It's all about her. And they were just like going to town, like saying some nasty fucking shit. And I was like, damn, like, man, they really don't like me, like, I mean, I know that, but it was just like, I was like, all right. And then that was it. And then I think I woke up again and I was like in real time, right? In this world, this life, this dimension, whatever, and this avatar. And I was like, what the fuck did I dream that? Fall back asleep. Next thing I know, I'm sleeping, and my mom, my brother, my sister, and Billy Ray Cyrus. My dad was Billy J. And when he played, like when he was a musician, like that was Billy J. Weston was his West or Weston. I don't remember now, because I used it as my stage name when I first moved to LA. I think it was Weston, but with an I, like Westin, because we were Wesolowski. And back then, you didn't want to use your name. You wanted like some cool name. So my dad was William John Wesolowski, but he was Billy J. Weston, Billy J. And everybody knew him as Billy J. So maybe Billy Ray was playing, maybe he was stepping in as, in this episode, stepping in for Billy J will be Billy Ray Cyrus, yay, clapping. They used to do that on shows, by the way, when they would like change actors or something. It was so weird. They did that with Bewitched. If you ever see they changed out the original Darren for a different Darren. And it was crazy because my first thought wasn't, why is my mom with Billy Ray Cyrus and my siblings? And my siblings were probably like in their 30s or something, because they're both in their, if I'm 53, my brother just turned 55 in July. So my sister's probably like 57 or 58, or going to be in September. I don't remember. Anyway, but in my dream, they were, really youthful and beautiful and, looked their, younger selves. They may have even been in their 20s now that I think about it. But my first thought wasn't like, why are you four together? Or why are you guys this age? Why is mom younger? Like, my mom was younger too. My first thing was, hey, I'm like, I need to talk to you and to Billy Ray. And he's like, okay. But in my dream, he was my dad. And I said, oh my gosh, I love Elizabeth Hurley. I was like, what's she like in real life? She seems so nice. I was asking him because he's supposed to be dating Elizabeth. I guess they are dating. They said that they were on social media and stuff. That was my first question, which is I just thought was hilarious because I woke up again like right after that. And I was like, what the fucking fuck? What the fuck? Then I woke up again and I just couldn't get comfortable. I fall back asleep and I'm sleeping on the floor again and I'm covered in snakes. No, well, I shouldn't say covered. There were 3 snakes altogether. One was slithering on top of me. One was coming towards me and one was like behind me, but about to like slither on top of me. And my siblings disappeared. Billy Ray Cyrus was gone, and it was just me and my mom. And one of the snakes was like cut in half, but it was like, it looked like it was cut in half, but it was still alive. Like it was like it regenerated, but like it wasn't long and slithery. And they were all different. All three of them were different colors. And I remember being like scared, and my mom saying, "It's okay. You don't have to, like, they're okay. They're not venomous. They're not gonna bite you, or they're not gonna hurt you," or something like that. And then I was like, okay, because I do love snakes, but in my dream, I didn't know if they were poisonous or not, because one was like electric green. It was like really bright, and I think it had like blue eyes. And that was the one that was like cut in half. It was weird. And you could see that it was cut in half. It was like the skin had like grown weird around the back side of it. It was so weird. And then like one of them was kind of like dark, and it looked like there was a time where Alder and I were going to live in Southern Oregon, and I researched, or we were looking at this place. We were going down to look at this work trade, and in the last minute, they ended up going with these good friends of theirs that lived out of the country, and they didn't know that they were moving back. So anyway, long story short, she did tell us that they had rattlesnakes down there. And I was like, oh no. I was like, because, animals love me and snakes love me. And I was like, I don't want to deal with that. And I was concerned, Alder and we like to walk around barefoot and things like that. And she's like, oh, you have to walk around in boots all the time. And I was like, I don't know if I'd like that. So interestingly enough, I ended up going through, and this being the year of the snake, this was earlier this year. That job offer came in like April, I think. It was like a few months after Baba passed. And so I was kind of obsessed with snakes for a while, because it was the year of the snake, but then also because of that. And then when I moved to this property, I kept seeing snakes. So I was like, do we have any? I don't think we have any poisonous snakes up here. So I was really into snakes. So I thought it was interesting. So in my dream, it looked like one of the poisonous snakes that I had seen that wasn't from up here, but I think it was like down in Florida or something. So that's why I think in my dream, like my rational mind is like, that's probably why I dreamt of the snakes. You know what I mean? Like, or why I had an initial fear of them in my dream is because I know that some of them are dangerous. Some of them are harmless. And around here, all we have is the sweet gardener snakes. But we got some big gardener snakes around here. That's why I researched, because I was like, that's a big fucking gardener snake. Like, and I've seen some big ones in the Pacific Northwest, but like, there was one on the property that I saw that I was like, okay, you're a big one. And it had like a diamond shape on its head. So I just thought that was fascinating. And then I woke up. So of course I woke up this morning and I'm looking up like dream interpretations and snake. That's why this started, is because I actually wanted to do a shorts and, tell you guys to like, listen to your dreams right now, because spirit has been coming to us in dream state forever, but definitely in the last like several years as we've been nearing the ascension. But in the last several weeks, I don't know about you guys, please comment below, but I've been having like just astral traveling. I call it subconscious city, where I'm like working stuff out. And that's where I think I was. I think I was in subconscious city. But a lot of times in subconscious city, I call it that because I'm in a city. And even though there could be trees or things like that, I tend to be in a city, not like out in nature. It's very interesting. But this all happened in this same little house. And the house looked like something out of like an old European, like Russian, like Eastern European, like things that I've seen in movies or documentaries, or it was just it just was a very cold, it almost felt like a prison cell, actually. It was kind of weird. And then this morning I woke up and I realized I left one of my windows open. And that makes sense, because when I have the windows open and there's a lot of traffic, because I live right next to the freeway, it's really uncomfortable. And Sunday nights tend to be one of the worst. Sunday through Thursday are really rough around here, because a lot of the logging companies, they don't work on Fridays and Saturdays a lot around here, especially at night, because of the travel industry. I found this out from somebody. I didn't know this, but there are two timber plants on the peninsula where I live, one in Port Angeles and one in Port Townsend, and they literally go back and forth all night long, Sunday through Thursday, delivering logs. So they go into, the woods and they do all their harvesting, and then they go back and forth to these plants. So it was interesting. When I woke up this morning, I was like, what the fuck is that? And my head was pounding and I was like, what? I was just like, what was all of that craziness? And I didn't want to wake up. I'm like, I don't want to wake up like this. Like, I don't want to have a bad day. Like, I'm supposed to run errands with Alder today. And I was just like, I don't want my mom's anniversary, death day, my moon day. Mondays are always special. It's my day. So, I was just like, Mondays and Thursdays are like my special days, because Thursdays, Thor's day, and it's Jupiter, and I'm a triple Sag, so Thursdays and Mondays tend to be really fortunate for me, or just really cool, special things tend to happen. But I was angry. I kept trying to fall back asleep because I wanted to have a better dream or a better experience or something. I just didn't want to wake up feeling that way. But what I realized is it was my mom coming in trying to talk to me, and she wanted me to, like, I feel like my mom desperately wants me to make peace with my siblings. And I feel like she's trying to do that. Or it could be me, like, still, I can feel their disdain and hatred for me. But I'm not supposed to be involved right now. I wanted to get involved. I know that they're going through law stuff. My mom and my stepdad came to me many times since my mom died, and they came to me in dream state one night, and they were like, we want you to be a part of this. Get a hold of the lawyer. And I was like, what? And then I ended up finding out that, like, I followed the breadcrumbs that they left for me and found the lawyer that was handling their estate, and I was going to get involved, but they told me no. They wanted me involved, but not involved. Meaning, like, when it gets to the point that I need to be involved, I'll be involved. But, like, in the meantime, just, like, let my sister handle things, let, the family or her church people, I don't know who's doing what, but, like, let them all handle things. But they just wanted me to know about it, I guess. I don't know. And then I found the link to the sale of their house, and it was so freaky because it looks the same. It even says in the ad, like, you can buy the home as is, with all their furniture and everything still intact. And I mean, down to, like, the toaster and shit like that, where I was like, but they're trying to sell it as a vacation home because that's what it was, their retirement home, and they have a guest house. I mean, it's beautiful. If you're looking for a place in Mountain Home, Arkansas, let me tell you, it's like 330,000 or something the last time I looked. And it's well worth it. I mean, it's fucking gorgeous. It's up on a bluff, like hundreds of feet up above the White River, and it, like, faces the sunset. It's magical. It has a 3-tiered deck going down the side of the it's not quite a mountain. And it has a guest house over the garage, and the huge, well, there's a guest house and a garage, but over the garage, my mom built an attic because she loved to decorate her house for all the seasons. So she'd change everything out, from the rugs to the drapes, everything. So she felt like she was, like, in it, she loved it. She was such a child at heart. That's what I loved about my mom. Like, she made everything special like that, but at the same time, it's like she had a way of just, like, man, she could just turn that, like, into darkness and shadow so quickly. It was so, like, fierce, and not in a good way. So she built an attic over the garage that could easily be turned into, like, another, like an extension of the guest house, or another little, like, guest house, So yeah, I mean, it's a cool, special little place. I mean, honestly, if the head of the KK didn't live there, and it wasn't so racist down there, I mean, I would have maybe tried to, fight for that house myself. And maybe one day I will own it and give it back to my family. And, when racism is a thing of the past, but because, they built it from scratch, and it's really magical, and it's really cool, and it's really beautiful. I mean, even to like the inside of the main cabin, they painted like a sky on the ceiling, so that like when you look up, you see the sky. It was really cute, like big fluffy clouds. Kind of looks like The Simpsons. My mom hired this artist and she's like, I thought she was gonna make it like cute, like or no, she was I thought she was gonna make it more like the sky, but instead she made it like kind of cutesy. She's like, I feel like sometimes I'm in a child's bedroom. I'm like, yeah, but it's kind of cute. It's kind of whimsy. And my mom loved fairies and like had fairy stuff and like those like globe things like all outside and wind chimes and that kind of stuff. But she was magical. She just unfortunately, instead of leaning into her magic, she leaned into her church and her Southern Baptist Bible, beliefs, and she chose her church over me. And that's what I told her in the end. I said, you chose your church over me. And she said that it was me, that I chose, like I was choosing, you know, um, paganism and all that over the church, and that I was turning my back against God and Jesus and all this. And I was like, Mom, I work with Jesus and God, as you call it. And no, I'm okay. I was like, you're the one that's has the blinders on, my friend. So it was just interesting. But anyway, so I just wanted to share that with you guys because it was such an intense experience. When I looked down, it was 11104, which is the number 7. That's my life path number. And that's actually the number that my mom died on. When I added it up, it was the number 7, and she was done. We go through cycles, and that's when she was meant to go, and it was all meant to happen that way. And I feel like in a weird way, even though last night was rough and like those weird dreams, thanks for letting me talk it out because, I realized yesterday that Alana and I had so much in common with what we had gone through, where we weren't sure if we were schizophrenic, bipolar, all of the above, on medication. And I think a lot of people are on medications, a lot of light workers, and just, we all have psychic ability. We've just been repressed by this third dimensional energy. Let's make America great again. No, 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 no. You want to go back into the archaic third dimensional energy. We're trying to bring people forward. We want to get people off the medications, onto healthy food, onto, it's like, that's not working. You know what I mean? Both sides of the government are corrupt, and in the United States government and in other countries, very corrupt. I think and I apologize if this hurts your feelings to our UK family, because I know that a lot of you guys really do honor the crown, but let's be honest, it's bullshit. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. And nobody needs to be the king. I don't care if it's been in your family. I don't care, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's just, people can hate Harry, but I think Harry's fucking awesome. He's like, listen, I don't want this. I don't want to be this. I don't want to walk around waiting, like, I don't want to do this. I want to have a normal life. That's what Diana wanted. And then they killed her for it. And so I think Harry was wise to be vocal. The more vocal he and Meghan were, the better, or else they were going to end up in a fucking car accident too. And if you think I'm kidding, I'm not. It's like, it's so corrupt. It's so corrupt all over the world. And there are some leaders that are not corrupt, and there are some leaders that are. And there are some leaders that are really trying to change the world, and there are others that want it to stay the same. So, we're just in this ascension time where all of that's going to eventually fade away. And that's why I feel like I'm going to end up living a really long life, because I feel like I'm here to be the mouthpiece. That's why Spirit wanted me to start these channels, because if for some reason I do die younger than I think I will, it's like, this will be my legacy. These will be my words and these readings and these teachings that were given to me, that, whether through other earthlings, light beings having an earthling experience, or through my spirit guides, my higher self, through God, Goddess, Creator, energy, through my meditations, all my life experiences and waking state and dream state. I've just shared my experiences, and I'm obviously not alone. There's people like me all over the world right now, and that's why we're speaking. Yesterday was so beautiful because, again, we had the US, the UK, and we had Iraq. Have you guys recognized, if you've been following Sacred Sunday, I highly recommend you do. It's free. We do free channelings. If you want to talk to a crossover loved one, if you have any questions, you can come in and talk to Spirit, and I'm there to help. But it's really cool that almost every week for a while now, we've had somebody from really far away. The week before or the week before that, we had someone from Dubai. We had a few weeks before that, we had someone from India. Like, it's really important that we have these people. Yesterday, the person that came through from Iraq, they were only 20, but they were so excited to like be a part of our group. You know, they were like, "Wow, this is really cool." You know, like I'm happy to be here. You know, and they were so involved, and that made me so happy. You know, because I felt it's actually really interesting because when they first came on, I felt a youthful energy, but I also felt a really old energy. So it didn't surprise me when they asked how old we were in the group. And at the time, there were three of us that were in our 50s, early 50s, one in our 30s. And then they're like, "Oh, I'm 20." And I'm like, "Oh, that's really cool," you know, because um, they're like, "I just subscribed." I'm like, "Good," because, you know, it's like we need to come together. We need to rally together. And, you know, especially in a lot of cultures where, you know, you just wouldn't stop talking to your parents. You don't do that, you know. In my family, I come from two big families. Both my dad and my mom both had big families. I've always been surrounded by a lot of people. And in turn ended up having big groups of friends. And in all of my years, I've always had a core group of friends. You know, I had my core group of friends from high school that led me until my late 30s, early 40s. And I had other friends, you know, that I collected, you know, in my 30s and in my 40s. And now in my 50s, I don't talk to, I literally have one person in my life that I've known since I was in my 20s. One person. One person. That's it. And that's because she and I connected when I was working. I spoke about it yesterday on Sacred Sunday. I was working at this art gallery, and she was an intern. And sometimes when I think about it, it's like I even forget that we had that life together because we were so young, you know. She was in her early 20s, and I think I was 20. No, no, that's not true. I was 28 when I lived in LA. Or I was in LA when I was 28. So no, it was in my early 30s, I think. But either way, yeah, because I think we're 10 years apart. So we lost touch after that job, and we reconnected when Facebook came out. And then when I was going through my awakening, she was going through her awakening too. And we were pretty much the same, you know, even though we weren't the same age, we were kind of at the same place in our awakening because, you know, age doesn't really mean anything. And so that's why she stayed in my life because, and some other people stayed in my life too that were going through the awakening, but I had to let them go because they still were talking to other people that I just, you know, I didn't want to, I just needed to let them go. I needed to go on my own. Hopefully some people will swing back around into my life. I hope so. But if it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. But she was meant to be, you know, like she was meant to stay in my life. Jules, she's the one you guys hear me talk about a lot when I say Jules. Jules doesn't like watch YouTube, or she's not like on here or whatever. Sometimes I'm called to send her something and she'll watch it, but not always. She has 3 children and she's very busy. She has her own business and her husband, and they have a lot going on. So, and she's a healer as well. And, you know, but we talk to each other and lean on each other when we need, you know, assistance. And she does know my family and I know her family. I don't think she's ever met my family in person, but I've met her family. In fact, I stayed with her parents one time when I was traveling. I was doing readings and traveling around the Midwest to different places to do readings and stuff, and to work with my shaman, who was also working in Michigan at the time. So I went and stayed with her parents. But I've never met her siblings. But it's interesting, But other than that, all the other people that are in my life now are either people I've met through social media this way, and we're sisters, we're family, we're friends, but we've never met in person, but we've met like on the phone or through Zoom, Skype kind of thing. And some of my clients that started out as my clients have become my very, very good friends, and they are also light workers. That's why they came to me. So, I'm very blessed, and I don't need my parents. I don't need my siblings. I don't need my family. I love them. I miss them, but I don't need them. I have my spiritual family, and that's really all that matters. I wish my blood and bone, I could talk to them and tell them everything that's happened to me and tell them, you know what I mean? Like, I would love to hear their stories because I know they have them. I mean, one of my nieces, one of the last conversations we had, I did a reading for her, and she was open to it. And I told her, I said, you're very much like me. And I said, you're going to have to make some decisions at some point, or you don't, I said, it took me years to stop talking to my family, So I don't know. It's an interesting road, and it's not easy, and it's not for the faint of heart. But just know that you're not alone and you're not crazy. And if you found yourself to this podcast or to this channel or to these, stories, these teachings, it's for a reason. We all have a lot of commonality and walk a lot of parallel lines together because we're going through such similar things. You're not alone. But I'm going to leave it here, and thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for being a part of, like I said, welcome to the new people. Welcome back to those of you who keep coming back. Thank you for your constant love and support. Thank you for your gifts and your donations. It does make a difference in my life and me being able to keep these readings going and keep this channel going. And we're growing in numbers every day, every week. And we're doing it naturally. We're walking the old way. We walk the old red road, as the Native Americans would say, and or the good red road, meaning like I could pay to have followers. I could pay, blah, blah, blah. I can do all these things. And Spirit is having me do it this way because when we do things with integrity and we do things in divine timing, that's when the true rewards come in. The instant gratification is exactly that, instant gratification. But instant gratification and a manifestation, and yes, you can manifest things into your life. Of course, we all do it every day, all the time. But there's a form of manifesting in divine timing, and then there's a form of manifesting to get what you want. Throat chakra, when you want it. This must be a message for somebody. I know it's hard to hear that, but you can't buy your way into your awakening. You know what I mean? Like, you can't buy your way back to yourself. You have to go through it. You have to get through it to get to it. I've been telling you this for 10 years, right? Like, you got to do it. And I've walked the walk and talked the talk and talked the talk and walked the walk so that I could be the example to you guys, so that, people can't be like, yeah, well, you did it this way. Or, yeah, well, I could do that too if I did it this way. It's like, no, it had to go down this way. Every bit of it. Even down to the deaths of my parents and Baba and my separation from Alder. And even now, like, dangling the man who was once the love of my life back into my life with the man that I feel is the love of my life now, realizing that that's such an old term. And Alder's my twin flame. This is something we've been through together, through lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes. And Bear is this beautiful, magical being that I was blessed to spend 3 magical years with. And years after that, still like getting in touch every so often. How are you doing? How are you doing? I mean, I think when he found out that I was separated, he was like, I still think about you. And I got the vibe he's single, but he never said outright that he was. But of course I want to just like run to him and have a life with him. I was like, sounds good. He's like, I'm so different now, like basically. And I said, wow, I go, we're the ages that I said, like, I feel like maybe someday when you're like 48 and I'm 53. And I didn't even remember it until we were talking. And I was like, God, remember when I said that? I was like, I literally said, because when we met, I was 28 or he was 28 and I was 33. And that number 28 again keeps coming up for me. Because I don't know if you guys know this, but Alder's birthday is May 28th. So my dad's death day is my husband's birthday. I mean, talk about what, you know what I mean? And I met Alder and Bear both in May. And I met Bear right after he turned 28. So he was just 28 when I met him. Like literally he had just had his birthday. I met him his birthday is May 2nd. I met him, I think, on May 7th or something. And Alder, I met on May 18th, and his birthday was like 10 days later on May 28th, which is like, what the fuck? So there's obviously some tie to spring with, men in my life. It's very interesting. But yeah, so it's just kind of, all of it is just really interesting. And I like to not dissect it, but Spirit said dissect it, but I guess I do, but not in the way that other people would, where I'm trying to like make things like line up to make the story be what I want it to be. It's more like, what am I missing? Or is there something here? Or, because I don't believe in coincidences, there's obviously ties that obviously mean something. So there must be something tied to a past life. Like maybe I had a love triangle between the three of them, in one lifetime, even with my dad. Maybe I, was with the three of them in different lifetimes in May. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's just really interesting. But I feel like being with Bear would be the easy way out. And I don't believe that's meant to be. I mean, I even got to the point where, as dark as this sounds, where I was like, Alder was like obsessed that he was going to die young. And so when I told, basically, long story short, when I was talking to Bear, I told Alder, because Alder and I decided to start trying to see each other again. We'd been separated a year, but we decided to start seeing. I gave him the option of whether he wanted to try again or let go. I hadn't told him about Bear yet because I didn't want that to be a deciding factor. I didn't want him to think like, oh, you're going to be with someone else, so I want to be with you. I'm like, no, I wanted it, and I had just really like started getting the downloads for Bear. So I wasn't, his father started coming to me, and it's a long story. I spoke about another podcast, and I spoke about it in other things. So if you're interested, go and listen to them, but you can hear the story. But what I was really feeling was that when Alder said, I feel like I'm going to die young, my first thought was like, holy shit, is he going to die? And that's why Spirit is pulling us apart, because he's going to die and I am meant to be with him. And that's why I said, wouldn't it be funny if we got together? We just met at the wrong time, because he was still in his like Playboy, I want to party, whatever. I had just come off of a divorce, my first marriage, and I wasn't ready for anything too serious. I thought we were just going to be a fun fling, but we fell in love. And so it was very interesting and very confusing for me. So when we broke up, I really thought like he needed time to grow up. I needed time to work on myself. I ended up going back to college, like all these things. So when Alder came into my life, I never thought I could love anybody as much as I love Bear. I just didn't think it was possible. But I fell so deeply for Alder. And so now I think it's interesting because Bear and I, it was very physical and very emotional, our relationship. And Alder and I, it's very philosophical and spiritual. We don't have a very strong physical or romantic relationship, Alder and I. I shouldn't say we never did. We did in the beginning, but when he started to, we were both going through our awakening at the same time. And as we were facing our demons and our addictions, one of his was his sex addiction. I was okay with taking sex off the table because I was going through menopause and sex became very painful for me. So I was like, okay, I'm okay with that. I wasn't okay with him taking other lovers, which I found out later. But we broke up, got back together like a gazillion times before we decided to betroth ourselves almost 5 years ago. So it's just been an interesting, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, I have to look at it all because, why is Bear coming back into my life after 8 years? Why is he coming back into my life in the exact time that I back then didn't realize I'm a medium? You know what I mean? And those years came to me. I literally remember saying it. And when I said it to him, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so crazy. Like, I remember that. So, working with spirit and spending time with Alder over the last few weeks and going on dates again, I realized that my chapter with Alder is not done. I don't know when and if it will be um, in this lifetime, meaning like I could die before him. I don't know. But either way, I know that it's unfinished business, that I'm still here to help him and he's still here to help me. And, whatever Bear is doing, maybe I'm just meant to help Bear, because he was struggling with his father's death, which when I found out that his dad died on January 19th of this year, I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Because my stepdad, I called him dad too, like TOO, like also, because my real dad was more like my friend and my stepdad was more like my dad. So, and I'd known him since I was a child because they were best friends. But he and my mom didn't get together until after my dad and my mom had split. But anyway, um, and of course that burned my dad's butter. But hey, my stepdad wasn't stupid. He was like, your mom's awesome, and he's like, your mom deserves better than your dad, and she did, and he was really good to her for the most part. But they were kind of oil and vinegar. But sometimes I think my mom and my stepdad were twin flames. So wrapping it up, I know I said I was going to wrap it up like 20 minutes ago, but but wrapping it up, I realized that as of now, this is where I need to be. And I think the more honest we get with ourselves and each other and our relationships and especially in our personal relationships, the easier it will be for us to like transcend into the person and the soul that we were meant to be in this lifetime. And if you're here listening to this, most likely you're a light worker, an earth angel, like you're here to help with the ascension. You're here to make a difference. And you probably already are, in one way or another. So, start looking at your relationships in all facets and all ways, start to, be like, why is this way? And why is this way? And why am I, blah, 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 to give yourself that time and that energy to really sit with it. Spend time away from these people so that you can really sit with it. The one thing that is hard for me is that Alder he still dips in and out of the shadow. So when he's like having a good time and he's funny and lovable, like we have a great time. But then other moments it's like, it's really difficult because he's just like, yes, no, and you're like, okay, all right. I'm like, let him be who he is. Let him be, like just let him be. Because I know that's not who he is. And I believe that the person that I'm in love with is still there. He just needs to find his way back. So I'm just going to keep holding space and work on myself and bring all my focus to this channel and all my focus to you guys and to spirit and my purpose and my path, and the rest of it will happen in divine timing. And it's also an escape, right? Like, why am I like so obsessed with these guys right now when I should be obsessed with myself? Bubba left me for a reason. Alder left for a reason. Like, we needed that to happen. Alder and I, that was amicable. We both agreed to take a break. We both thought it was going to be for a few weeks, maybe a month. I didn't know he was going to fall so deep into shadow like that. I was concerned when eclipse season came around last year that it was going to be really bad. But that's why I think they had me like push him during the Lionsgate portal to start dating again and being more romantic. Because if we had stayed through that, this eclipse season is going to be really, really intense. Especially with the full lunar eclipse on a full moon. It's going to be very intense. So, that's going to happen September 7th to 8th. Whenever you watch this, it's timeless. But in real time, like I said, it's August 18th. So It's only like, 3 weeks away now or whatever. So keep that in mind, and keep your heart light on, keep your love focused, stay as grounded as possible. And, it's okay to love yourself first and take care of yourself. And that's what I realized with these guys. Like, so many times they both took care of themselves when they needed to take care of themselves. And I was always like, oh no, and trying to make sure and save everything. And, no. Now it's like, this is going to be 50-50, or it's not going to work. This is going to be amicable and happy, or this isn't the day we hang out. You know what I mean? Like, we have to make choices. It's imperative that we do. It's part of our growth process. And, choosing yourself first, like I said, you're just putting your oxygen mask on first, and that's the way it should be, because you can't help anybody else if you can't breathe. So until next time, take good care of yourselves and each other. I love you so much. Blessed be. Oh, bye.